All right, so this is gonna be a new series on this channel. Uh, Honestly, just to start off, uh, I want to just give a short introduction into kind of, I guess, who I am and my relationship with the Pokemon trading card game, and so I'll just start off there, so there's just no confusion about kind of my intentions or my anything related to do with uh other things on this channel, and also with just my overall opinions about the Pokemon trading card game. All right, so my name is Rotimi. uh I'm from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I played a Pokemon trading card game. I've been playing since about 2016. I've been playing Pokemon pretty much, since I've been a kid. But I started collecting and playing the card game when I was about 17 years old, so in 2016. And I took onto the game pretty quickly, I would say. I learned how to shuffle pretty quickly. I didn't really have a lot of struggle learning the game. And so, right from jump, I was always a very innovative player. And that's how I've always been with Pokemon. I played a lot of different formats before I started playing the card game. Played a lot of singles, played a lot of organized play, particularly like in person like events. Nothing like sanctioned by the Pokemon trading card game, but just like uh fan made formats, I guess you could call it, where you would have to build specific teams for specific events. Went to a lot of events like that. Um, Played just generally the game in general. So I have a very good uh grasp on Pokemon as a game, and so I've done a lot of work in studying the game, studying teams, concepts, and so I have a very good grasp on the game. Um, I'm very passionate about it. I feel like Pokemon is a game that needs a lot of support because a lot of people, Pokemon is like arguably the biggest IP in the world in terms of gaming, and so a lot of people are in the community, whether just on the outside of it or very much immersed in it. And so it's a game that sees a lot of characters come in and out of it. And so it's something I'm very passionate about because I feel like it's very important that we preserve Pokemon. And so that's ultimately my goal in this series. I don't know what's going to become of it. I want it to be something that I'm doing regularly because, like I said, I want to preserve the Pokemon game and I want to help preserve the Pokemon game. But the way I feel about particularly the trading card game community is that it needs a heck of a ton of work, right? And to put it all on someone like my shoulders solely is very selfish, and it's just very irresponsible for me to do that as well because I took on the task of trying to single-handedly preserve the game with no support from other people in the community. Then I would get burnout. I'd get very miserable, and not having those things be a part of my life is very important to me. And so it's something that I don't know what's going to become of it, but I feel like it's something that I need to do eventually, whether it's after I feel I've gotten the results I want or it just becomes so imperative to start doing it that I can't hold it back anymore. And so I feel like it's high time to kick the series off. And so this is going to be a series of, I don't really know how to put it because it's going to cover so much that I don't really know how to put a label on it. So maybe eventually I can figure that out. But uh, this is just going to be a very new take on Pokemon content in general. And so, you know, I hope you guys are going to enjoy this. And ultimately, like I said, yeah, the ultimate goal is just to keep this game preserved. And so, whether people, like it or not like it, honestly, it doesn't matter because the goal is not for myself or the contents to be liked. It's so that um, the game gets preserved, basically, right? And so the first episode, if you want to call it that, of the series is going to be um, sort of an overview of some of my Chien Pao lists. Uh, so Chien Pao came out in Paldea Evolved, Scarlet and Violet Paldea Evolved, and it quickly took on as a very popular combo deck. Uh, Again, that's something that's not really discussed too much in the Pokemon community. Is like styles of decks because people just want to play something that's pay to win, or they just want to play something that's heavy control, right? So when it comes to styles of decks, people don't really have a good grasp of them, basically. And so that's partially another aspect of this series is going to be really covering what decks are supposed to be doing. And so we can have an understanding of how to play them and how to analyze lists, basically, right? And so Chien Pao is a pretty cool deck. Probably my favorite deck in this format. Uh, it's has its partner because that's kind of like the whole theme of Paldea Evolved was that they printed the Treasures of Ruin for the first time, which are the new legendaries from Scarlet and Violet, and they all gave them partner Pokemon, right? I can't remember the other ones off the top of my head. I know Wu Chen had Fortress, Ting Lu was supposed to be Koraidon, from Scarlet and Violet, and then I forgot who Chi's partner was supposed to be, but Chien Pao's is Excalibur's, right? And so Chien Pao Excalibur was supposed to be like, yeah, like the deck, the combo deck coming out of Paldea Evolved. And so it had a lot of support when it came out, still does, like Arita and stuff like that. And so um it was a very powerful deck, right? And it still is, right? And so it's I don't want to go too much over kind of how it played out in terms of play rates and success and in terms of results from Paldea Evolved onward. But Chien Pao is a very good deck, has a very powerful abilities, and its concept is very sound, right? It doesn't fall apart too easily, right? And it can do what it does very well, right? So I want to kind of go over some lists that I play for this format, which is now Prismatic Evolutions. But it's just Prismatic Evolutions isn't really a format in the sense that it's really made a big shift on the game because it's just a special set. It's not a main set, so it's not supposed to make a big shift on the game, and it didn't, and it's not going to. So don't expect crazy decks to be coming out of Prismatic Evolutions. So let's just call it the Surge and Sparks format because it is still. This has been a pretty long format. Surge and Sparks I think came out November 7th, and so this is going into almost the third month of Surge and Sparks, and we're not getting a new set again until late March, I think. So this is gonna be a very long format. It's gonna be about almost half the year, and so I feel like this is high time to really start fleshing out these concepts, just to give the format some new flavor, you know, and a new look. And so I'm gonna start off with this list. This is uh Chien Pao the Dunsparce. I call this one Chien Pao Switch because this one plays switches. And you'll see why I call it Chien Pao Switch when we get to the next list. So Chien Pao is a deck that needs very large hand sizes to function, basically, right? And it does that in two main ways, just by the deck by itself. And the first way is by doing a lot of damage so that it can take prizes, a lot of prizes in one attack. So it can take like two prizes, for example, in one attack. And through its ability, Shivery Chill, right? So it has its ability, Shivery Chill. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may search your deck for up to two basic water energies cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Then shuffle your deck, right? So if you played other card games, they call this a +2 because it adds two cards to your hand size. And if you've played a game like Magic the Gathering, for example, and you know that uh, in a game like Magic the Gathering, at the end of your turn, you can only have seven cards in your hand, right? So if you have more than seven, you have to discard until you have seven, right? In Pokemon, your hand size is infinite, right? So you can have as many cards as you want in your hand. And so Chien Pao's success is through building up big hand sizes and setting up his board really fast, right? So when Chien Pao came out, it was Battle Styles to Paldea Evolved. And Battle Styles didn't really have really good ways of drawing cards. So there wasn't really a way for Chien Pao to really build up hand sizes really quickly. But even still, it was still a very powerful archetype at the time because we were still playing with VMAXs. So being able to do infinite damage, which Chien Pao's attack Hailblade does, you may discard any amount of water energy from your Pokemon. This attack does 60 damage for each card you discarded in this way. Right? So being able to hit that 300 plus, which is what most VMAXs were, uh, was a very powerful attack, even though you didn't have that agency to really build up your hand size. And so, um, this card was powerful nonetheless, right? And so now we're in. I want to call it just. I'll just call it Search and Sparks. Um, and so we've seen a lot of support come in for Scarlet and Violet cards. We've had a lot of main sets come out, and so it's with a lot of main sets coming out, right? And this card's still having at least one more year of being legal. This card, this archetype should be getting a lot of support and should get getting more powerful, right? And so a lot of concepts with Chien Pao have been coming around, and I'm going to cover some of the ones I have. But generally, Chien Pao hasn't really seen a lot of growth in terms of its uh, play rate, right? And that's unfortunate, honestly, because Chien Pao is a very powerful deck. We're gonna go over my list, and I'll talk about what makes Chien Pao so powerful. But Chien Pao, there's no reason that Chien Pao should be played as little as it can, as it should, as it has been. Sorry. And so there's a lot of reasons for that, and maybe I'll make a whole video about that. But for the purpose of this video, Chien Pao is just supposed to be played a lot, and it just hasn't been, right? So let's just go over this list, and then I'll talk more about Chien Pao and kind of maybe I'll talk a little bit about what Chien Pao was lacking in terms of what it needed to have a higher play rate, right? So this list plays three Chien Pao. Um, you've been seeing a lot of lists that have been placing at regionals recently. Chien Pao, uh, a lot of people have been cutting their Chien Paos down to two. Um, you know, honestly, I don't really agree with that. I think that Chien Pao, and I'll explain kind of why, but Chien Pao, I feel like if you're playing Chien Pao, you should be playing it with three. If you're playing Chien Pao Excalibur, particularly, and so I play three. Um, then we get into the Excalibur lines. So I play three Frigibacks. I feel like this is the optimal Frigibacks because in a format with a lot of control decks, you want to be able to have a large variety of attackers. You know, we have the other Frigibacks that is in this format that is this one, collect one, one water energy, you can draw a card. And you also have this one, the 60 HP one retreat one with tackle for uh, water and a colorless for 30 damage. These, you know, they both can serve their purposes, but I don't feel like they are really complementing the Baxcalibur deck in general, right? Because if you have a card like Baxcalibur that can, with its ability Super Cold, as often as you like during your turn, you may attach a basic water energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon. Um, to have an attack as powerful ability as powerful as this, you want to be able to have as many attackers that can utilize it, right? And especially when you're benching a lot of Frigibaxes, you have a lot of extra Frigibaxes in your deck. You don't want to have a lot of extra cards that aren't really as powerful as they could be, right? So I feel like this is the optimal Frigibax for this. Um, for this deck, for the Chien Pao Excalibur deck. And so this is the one I play. You play 3 copies. Um, mainly so that you can hit them early, and also you don't feel like it's overwhelming your hand to have a lot of Frigibaxes because you want a lot of deck space, bench space, particularly for this list. Maybe we'll go over some Chien Pao lists from other formats, but I feel like 3 is a good amount just so you can get 2 down. And maybe if you prize one, you have 2 still in your deck, right? So play 1 Arctobax. Well, generally when for Chien Pao Excalibur came out, people weren't really playing the Arctobax. But explain later why this list plays 1 Arctobax. I was even considering playing 2, and you'll see why. But this list plays 1 Arctobax. It's not for technical machine devolution. That is something that you can play into, but this is not the reason why you play the 1 Arctobax, and you'll see why later. All right, and then for the Baxcalibur line, I play 3 Baxcalibur. This is just so you can just prize one and you can draw into them early. Um, you always want to only set up a maximum of 2 Baxcaliburs. 3 is too much. There's no boards. There's no arch. There's no decks that can KO 2 Baxcaliburs in one turn, full HP. So there's no reason to be stressing over. Oh, I want to get 3 Baxcaliburs into play. The max you want is 2, and so I play 3 so you can get 2 down, and maybe you can prize one or have one extra if one goes down. Right, and you have your Radiant Greninja, of course. You all know what this card does. Concealed cards, its ability. You must discard an energy card from your hand in order to use its ability. Once during your turn, you may draw 2 cards. Right, so it's a +1. You discard one, you draw 2. And then it has its attack. Like Shuriken, discard 2 energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 90 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. Right, so it's a very good ability attack to knock out low HP basics, or maybe Pokemon that are critical health. Maybe like a Roblox Pokemon or a EX or a Pokemon V that's at low health. You can knock out a low HP Pokemon basic or and a low HP EX or Pokemon V, right? Right. And so now we get into the engine for this deck. So Chien Pao has seen a lot of engines throughout its well actually that's not really true. Chien Pao hasn't really seen that many engines. Chien Pao has generally stayed pretty stagnant in terms of its concepts, particularly with its engine. Um, when it came out, people were playing it with like Arceus V Star. People were playing it with um Vibero. and that was generally how people kind of decided that you should be playing it. And so those were generally how people drew through their deck with Chien Pao deck. And I feel like it's good, but the thing about the barrel is that the barrel is a very big liability because it just sits on your board and it has a very low HP, 120, and it has a very high retreat cost as well, right? And so if you're just drawing with a big barrel, um, it's nice, but it's something that's very easy to play around, basically, right? And so I feel like the Dunsparce engine is better, and especially because of what I was talking about earlier with Chien Pao as a concept, is that Chien Pao wants to build big hand sizes, right? And so the Dunsparce, its ability runaway draw. Once during your turn, you may draw 3 cards. If you drew any cards in this way, shuffle this Pokemon and all attached cards into your deck. Right. So the Dunsparce, its ability, sorry, it's very powerful. If you just play it down and you don't use it, then it can turn into a +3. Otherwise, it's a +2, which is very powerful in any card game, let alone Pokemon. And so, especially when you can draw from any hand size and draw 3 cards, it's very powerful, especially in Chien Pao, right? You combo a Silvery Chill into drawing 3 cards, right? That's 5 extra cards in your hand, right? And so I feel like the Dunsparce is probably the best way to go in terms of um, an engine, right? Especially because it's not on your board anymore. It frees up a lot of space for other cards that you want to play down. If you want to play down an extra Chien Pao, 2 Baxes, right? And so yeah, I feel like the Dunsparce is like probably the best engine for Chien Pao, right? Um, yeah. So then I also play one Mew as the engine, right? And as its ability restart, once during the turn, you may draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. So it's a very strong for like comboing to draw extra cards, especially because Chien Pao has a lot of discard in its list, so you can get your hand down really quickly and draw back up to you have 3 cards. And also Mew has its attack genome hacking. 3 colorless energy, choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. So because Baxcalibur can charge up genome hacking in one turn, if you have 3 energy, um, this card is just very powerful in Chien Pao. And also you have the free retreat, right? So if you bench this thing and they want to chase a Baxcalibur or they want to chase Radiant Greninja or something, then you can just use it as a pivot, right? So this card's very powerful in Chien Pao. Then the last card, which is a new addition from Surge Sparks, is Chien Pao, right? We call these the babies versions in Pokemon trading card game. So you'd have the EX version, which is the big one, and then you'd have the baby, which is the one prize or single prize one, right? So Chien Pao, the basic 120 HP, water type. It has its ability Snow Sink. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may discard a Skating in play, right? So this is a historically powerful ability in the Pokemon trading card game. We've seen it recently on Pumpkaboo, this particularly ability, and we've also seen the discard ability, Stadium and Play ability from Marshadow from Unbroken Bonds, I believe. And so, especially in a deck like Chien Pao that doesn't have a lot of single prize attackers, this card is very powerful. Very, very powerful. It makes Chien Pao a very powerful deck in the theory. And so I play 2 of them particularly because it can serve as basically what this Frigibax is trying to do, right? So some people have conceptualized that playing this Frigibax is better than the 70 HP one because this one has one retreat cost. So instead of playing this Frigibax, you can play two Chien Paos, right? And since it has the one retreat, it can act like the 60 HP Frigibax, right? Then it has attack Icicle Loop for 120 damage for two waters and a colorless energy. Put an energy attached to this Pokemon into your hand, right? So you can attack with three energy, put one in your hand, and you can set up a knockout for a Radiant Greninja, set up a knockout for a Melee X, set up a knockout for Chien Pao. Right? So this is a very, very powerful attack in the Chien Pao deck. And so I feel like if you want to, you should probably play two. Generally, with abilities like this, you only play one. But since this thing can serve as an attacker, a pivot, an open, like when you want to open it on your opening turn, and its ability is very powerful too, especially in this format with a lot of annoying stadiums like Area Zero Underground Depths and cards like Collapse Stadium and Pokestop. You want to just have a lot of stadium outs, right? And especially considering you're not going to have a lot of cards on your bench because your draw engine is the Dunsparce. This card gets exceedingly more powerful, right? So that's the Pokemon concepts. That's the Pokemon line, sorry. And we'll go into the trainers. So right off the bat, you got your four Aritas. You just want to have four Aritas in your Chien Pao deck. It's just the strongest combo card in this whole deck. If you open a Chien Pao and you open a Frigibax on your first turn going first, and you have an Arita in your hand, next turn you automatically got your Hail Blade, right? For minimum 240. And if you had another water in your hand, you can hit 300. So not a lot of Pokemon have 300 HP on turn one. So very powerful card. You want to have in your deck. So you play four of them, right? And then we'll go before we go into the search cards. We'll go into the kind of core of Chien Pao. So you have Rare Candy. Rare Candy lets you evolve from Frigibax to Baxcalibur without having to go through uh, the Arctibax line. So again, you can attack on turn two, going first. And so I play three. Um, I play three mainly in this one because of the A spec, which we'll get into. And I feel like four is kind of excessive because the idea is that if your backs gets knocked out, and if your backs gets knocked out, then you're probably going to lose anyway. So you don't want to have four rare candies if you're only going to really just set up one to win the game, right? So three is a good amount so that you can draw into it early, and so that if you prize one, you still have two, right? So next we're going to the A spec. So this A spec came out in Stellar Crown called a Grand Tree. Reads once during each player's turn, that player may search their deck for a stage 1 Pokemon that evolves from one of their basic Pokemon, put it onto that Pokemon to evolve it. That Pokemon was evolved in this way. That player may search their deck for a stage 2 Pokemon to evolve it. And that player shuffles their deck. And it has this flavor text. Players can't evolve a basic Pokemon during their first turn or basic Pokemon that was put into play during this this turn. So it's basically saying that you can't just put down a basic and then evolve it into a stage two, right? So this card's very powerful because what it does in Chien Pao is it basically allows you To get two Baxes up, if you start two Frigibaxes on your bench, it allows you to get two Baxcaliburs up without having to use two rare candies. So it basically just reduces the amount of cards you need to combo with, basically, right? And so comboing this also with the fact that you play the Dunsparce, you can bench two the Dunsparces and have a Grand Tree in play. Sorry, two Dunsparces and have a Grand Tree in play. And you can have the Dunsparce in play in hand and evolve the Dunsparce, use its ability, and then you can use Grand Tree to evolve the other Dunsparce without having to draw into another the Dunsparce, right? So it's very powerful to be able to evolve without having to have cards in your hand, right? Especially considering Chien Pao hand is very important to it. So not um using your hand to evolve your cards, evolve your bench is very powerful, right? So that's also the other reason why I only play three rare candy, right? So that's the A spec, and we'll get into the rest of Chien Pao's core. So of course you play four superior energy retrieval, discard two cards from your hand. You can't discard two cards, you can't play this card. Put four basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. You can't choose a card you discarded with the effect of this card, right? So that basically means that if you have, for example, three water energy in your discard pile for Chien Pao, and you discard a water energy from your hand to use superior energy retrieval, you can't take four energy. You can only take three, right? So it's just so that it just lowers the power of the card because this card is already powerful enough. Put four basic energy into your hand is a very powerful attack, especially in Chien Pao. So this is just a fail safe so that the card isn't just like completely broken, right? And then of course you play Super Rod, shuffle up to three in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from your discard pile into your deck. So you could put like two water energies and like a Chien Pao or two water energies and a Radiant Greninja if you used it in the early game, right? And then you can use Chien Pao's ability to get those energies immediately, right? So it's a very powerful and invaluable card in Chien Pao. And then I play two bosses orders. I've always played Chien Pao with two bosses orders. I feel like um, two is a very good account because Chien Pao, especially Chien Pao, goes through this deck very quickly. So the higher odds you have of drawing into boss, the better. And so you just want to play a good amount. And I think like two is a good amount for Chien Pao. And I played a one Pal pad, right? So you could theoretically have four bosses orders, right? So you don't need to play more than uh two, right? So Pal pad reads shuffle up to two supported cards from your discard pile into your deck, right? So you can just shuffle two bosses and you can use two bosses, right? So that's the general core of Chien Pao. Then we'll get into the search cards. So you have four Ultra Ball. Discard two cards from your hand. You do search your deck for a Pokemon, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your deck. So it lets you get anything. So if you have a rare candy in your hand, you can discard two cards from your hand, and you can get back Excalibur, you can evolve Frigibacks, right? Very simple. And Nest Balls, search your deck for base Pokemon, put it into your bench. And you may be wondering, why don't we play Buddy Buddy Poffin, which lets you search uh, your deck for up to two basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less and put them into your bench and shuffle your deck. And the reason is because Buddy Buddy Poffin does not search your whole deck for basic Pokemon, right? So you can't search out Chien Pao's with it. You can't search out Radiant Greninja. So this card's power level is not that powerful in this deck, especially considering Excalibur and the Dunsparce are not attackers. So getting them early is not really that important, and you only need one or the other generally in the early game. So there's not really a point in playing four of these, right? Or just playing any in general, right? So I play Nest Ball instead, and Nest Ball's value will always be powerful throughout the game, right? Compared to Buddy Buddy, which is only good in the early game, right? And then I play four Iono. Generally, Chien Pao games can go pretty long, so if you want to be able to play an Iono as much as possible to slow down your opponent, and so you can also get your board set up very quickly because Chien Pao's hand can be very dead if you don't draw too hot. So if you're not taking prizes, Iono is a very powerful trainer supporter card to have in your deck. So you just want to play as many as possible, right? Especially considering your other supporter, Arita, doesn't really draw you cards; it's just search. So you don't want to be just playing Arita every single turn. You also want to be restarting your hand, right? So Iono's very powerful in this deck, right? And then go to the last card, which is Switch, right? So I'll get into the next Chien Pao list, but basically, um, Switch is very powerful in Chien Pao because there's not a lot of board states where you're gonna be able to get to the attacker that you want, which is either Chien Pao or the Ninja. And so Switch is very powerful because it can save you a lot of cards in your hand if you need to switch attackers or if you need to get like a Baxcalibur that got trapped in the active out. And so Switch is very powerful in this deck. And also when you're set up and you don't really need the switches anymore, then Switch can just be a very good fodder card for Ultra Ball and Superior Energy Retrieval. So Switch is just very powerful in this deck. Right? And Switch gets you going very quickly, right? So Switch is very good in this deck, right? Switch has a lot of combos that you can do. Like if you open a Frigibax and a Nest Ball, then you can Nest Ball and you open a Switch, and you can Nest Ball out of Chien Pao and then switch into it, and then you get into Shivering Shell, right? So I feel like Switch is very powerful in this deck, and so this is the Switch version of Chien Pao I'm playing for Surgeon Sparks, and so I play four Switches, right? Just so you can get max value from them, right? So that's the trainer cards. Then you got the energy, right? I played eight basic water, right? You don't really need any more. You don't need any more. Any other types of energies. All your attackers can attack with water energy, and so there's no reason to play any other types of energies, right? So this is Chien Pao Switch, I call it, and so I feel like this is probably my strongest Chien Pao list I have right now. This is the one I play if I'm going to a local or a challenge or a cup, and it's pretty good, right? Chien Pao is a pretty straightforward deck. Just want to knock out big Pokemon, and you want to keep the tempo going, right? So that's kind of the point aim of this jump out list, right? So this is my second jump out list that I'm playing for Surgeon Sparks. Um, this one is just called Chimp Out the Dunsparce. This is the original list I was playing. Um, this one you'll notice very quickly, kind of some things about this list compared to the other Chimp Out list. And so we'll just get right into it real quick. So it's the same Chien Pao. count, 3 Chien Paos, 3 Frigibacks, 1 Arctibax, 3 Excalibur, 3 Dunsparce. I didn't mention in the first profile that I played a 60 HP Dunsparce because this one has free retreat. So this one is just arguably just the better for Chien Pao, right? And 3 Dunsparce, 3 Greninja, Mew EX, and 2 Chien Paos, right? And so it's basically just the same lines, the original Chien Pao list. And so then we get into trainers. So you got the same 4 Ultra Balls, 4 Ritas, 3 Rare Candies, Grand Tree, Super Rod, Iono, Pure Energy Retrieval, 2 Boss Orders, Palpad, 4 Ball, right? The difference between this list and the other list is that this list plays 3 Deduction Kit, right? So Deduction Kit was a card that came out in certain Sparks, and it reads: look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put them back in any order, or shuffle them and put them on the bottom of your deck, right? So if you've been playing for a while, you know cards such as Pokédex, or there was a Rotom card, forgot the name of it, from Sun and Moon. That also made you let you look at the top amount of cards of your deck. So this is kind of a spiritual successor to those cards. This one's way more powerful because after you look at them, you can put them on the bottom of your deck if you don't like them, right? So generally, the kind of goal of this card is that Chien Pao is going to be thinning a lot from his deck very early. So to be able to fix the top 3 cards of your deck means that you can see cards that you want to see very quickly, right? So through playing this card though in Chien Pao, I realized that if you're just playing Deduction Kit by itself, you're gonna have to run hot basically because what will happen is that because you have cards like Frigibax and like Chien Pao, for example, you have to get them out of active, right? And if you open these 2 cards, right, and you don't have water energy in your hand, and you don't draw into like Iono, then you're gonna have a lot of games where you're gonna be starting very slow, right? So even having this card in your deck just by itself will cause a lot of problems for you, basically, because you're either gonna not initiate the prize trade, or you're gonna take a while to get Chien Pao into active, right? So that was the idea of cutting this card for Switch, was that if I'm going to be opening like Frigibax or Chien Pao, then I at least want to get him out of active, right? So I feel like Deduction Kit's strong, but I feel like Switch is just stronger, right? And so I play 3, and so the last card is 1 Artisan. So Artisan is basically just to compensate for the fact that you're gonna get knocked out a lot, because if you don't open Chien Pao, then you're gonna start off very slow. So this is just so that you can get your basics out very quickly, right? And then you have the same count of energy, 8 basic waters, right? So this is the original Chien Pao list I had for Surgery Sparks. It's fun, but I definitely like the Switch one better. All right. So the final list I'll look over for this deck profile video is my Chien Pao list from Stellar Crown. Um, this one, Stellar Crown, was a very slow format. Um, the format kind of centered around a lot of decks that just wanted to just set up and just hit each other back and forth. And so my idea for Chien Pao in Stellar Crown was basically to just get a big board set up and just hit back and forth and then disrupt on the late game so that I can get the final knockouts, right? For to take the last prizes, right? So that's kind of what this deck was trying to do. And so it didn't have the Dunsparce, and instead its draw engine was Kingdra from Lost Origin. So its ability Seething Currents. Once during your turn, you may have either player shuffle their hand and put it on the bottom of their deck. That player pointing cards at the bottom of their deck in this way, they draw 4 cards, right? So um if you played in Sun and Moon Shining Legends, you remember the card Marshadow, which had this ability Let Loose, which read if you play this card, I'll just pull it up. Um, here, it's banned, so it's not here. But it's the card got banned. It was very powerful, and I don't know if you can pull up banned cards. I don't think you can, but the card got banned. It was very powerful, and so what it did, actually, maybe oh, no, it's right here. When you play this card from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may have each player shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 4 cards, right? So this basically card basically let you play it down, and then each player shuffled their hand and played 4 cards. So if you play a lot of Pokemon, you know that this is basically the supporter card Judge. So this is the effect of Judge. Each player shuffles their hand and draws 4 cards. But this is on a basic Pokemon, right? So you had like Zoroark and stuff like that in that format, and being able to and you also had the ability to play a supporter card on your first turn during Sun and Moon. So being able to put your opponent down to 4 cards going first, and then play like a Lily, which will let you draw up to 8 cards on your first turn, was very powerful. So this card got banned. Very unfortunate, but yeah, that's what happens when you abuse broken cards, right? And so this card was just a more toned down version of this. So it was either you choose your opponent or you choose yourself. It's not both, right? So this is a toned down version. This card, it was very powerful, but the card never got any play throughout Scarlet and Violet or throughout Sword and Shield for that matter. So the card was largely forgotten. But I wanted to play this card because in Stellar Crown it was a very slow format. So you were able to build this card up and then use its ability multiple times in a game, right? So this one played 3 Chien Pao, like usual, 3 Frigibax, 1 Arctibax, 3 Baxcalibur, 1 Radiant Greninja, plays 2 Horsies from Lost Origin. This is so that if you open it, if you're going second, you can use Reverse Thrust to get out the active. 2 Kingdra, 1 Mew EX, and 1 Lumineon V. Right. So generally, the idea with Luminium V is that you can set your board up quickly, right? Because since Kingdra is your other draw engine, or it is just your main draw engine, you get more value from Arita, right? Because if you use multiple Aritas in a game, you can use them to set up a Baxcalibur, or you can use it to set up a Kingdra. So Luminion is just a very powerful card in this deck, right? So trainers, this trainer line was very much focused on just winning the late game. So, you had the usual four Euretas, then you had four Wizards, and four Night Stretcher, right? So the idea was that you would just be able to get as much draw power from possible from cards like Radiant Greninja, being able to thin your hand with Night Stretcher without having to use a card like Superior Energy Retrieval, and then get down to Mew EX hands, where you can use Mew EX's ability, and also just so that you can retrieve cards like Luminion and Radiant Greninja really quickly, right? And so that was kind of the idea of the four Night Stretcher, four Switch. And you have the four Ultra Balls, one Pokestop. So my ace spec was Unfair Stamp, which I still think is the strongest ace spec in the game. You can use this card only if one of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Each player shuffles their hand into their deck, then you draw five cards and your opponent draws two cards, right? So again, if you played in Sun and Moon, you remember a card called Reset Stamp. Your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck and draws a card for each of their remaining prize cards. So this card was supposed to be a replacement for End in the Sun and Moon format, which read each player shuffles his or her hand into his or her deck, then each player draws a card for each of his or her remaining prize cards, right? So Reset Stamp was supposed to basically be a replacement for that card, but a lot of combos came out with Reset Stamp that were very unfair, pun intended. And so this card also got banned, just like Marshadow. Um, and so having a card like Unfair Stamp that isn't banned, which basically does the same thing as Reset Stamp, except it shuffles your hand too. It's a very powerful card to have in your deck, right? So I didn't play Grand Tree in this deck. I played Pokestop. Generally, Pokestop is kind of what people play as their support, as their stadium in Chien Pao. So it's kind of just par for the course. And so this list played two Iono and one boss's orders. So I had to cut down on the Ionos and the boss order counts to fit the night stretchers in particular. Because if I had to choose between cut and switch a night stretcher, I would cut night stretcher for sure. Um, and this list also just played one Serena to compensate. So Serena reads: choose one, discard up to three cards from your hand. You must discard at least one card. You do draw cards until you have five cards in your hand, or switch one of your opponent's bench V with their active Pokemon. Right? So very powerful supporter that lets you either draw or use what's called Gust in Pokemon TCG that lets you pick up one of your opponent's bench Pokemon off the bench and put in the active. And so I cut down on the Ionos and the boss. As a compensate, I put a Serena. And you play the one Power Pad, so you get extra two counts effectively of each supporter. And four superior energy or two, right? And the four candies. Right. Then the four, nope, for the energy count, you got your 8 basic waters, right? So this list was a little shorter on the Pokemon count. It was generally just because you wanted to just set up your board as quickly as possible. So you didn't want to have a lot of fluff in your deck. You just wanted to get your board set up and you just start taking knockouts, right? So that's kind of the Chien Pao concepts. Um, Chien Pao, the issue with Chien Pao, I'll get into Chien Pao's main issue, why it doesn't see a lot of play rate or its results are not really that great, to be quite honest. The issue with Chien Pao is that Chien Pao is a very difficult deck to play. It seems very straightforward. All you do is just set up a Excalibur, get your Chien Pao active, and just do infinite damage. But playing Chien Pao is very hard because you have to be very decisive. Right? If I had to boil it down really quickly, right? Chien Pao is not a deck you can just sit around and just kind of map out your turn. You have to be very decisive and you have to just make decisions very quickly and you just have to let your opponent play the game, basically. Right? Chien Pao is not a control deck, it is a combo deck. And so the more your opponent plays the game, the faster you can make your decisions, basically, right? So you don't want to have in the early game long turns, which is why you don't play a card like, for example, uh, this card, Squawkability EX. Once during your first turn, you discard your hand and draw 6 cards. You can't use more than one Squawk and Seize ability during your turn. So this card also came out in Paldea Evolved. Um, and so this is a card that if you play it, then your turn ones can be arguably very long because you have to do a lot of thinking of, okay, do I want to use Squawk and Seize? Then you have to map out, okay, how is my opponent's um board gonna look? So are they gonna be able to dust my Squawk ability and take 2 prizes easily? So you don't want to be playing cards like Squawk ability because you just want your opponent to play the game. Because the more your opponent plays the game, the faster you can play, basically. Right? So that's kind of the idea with combo decks. And so you don't play a lot of strong early game cards. And so that's kind of why you play cards like Unfair Stamp, right? Because if you have an Unfair Stamp, right, and you open a Candy Backs, and then you have a Rita in your hand, you can just Rita for Unfair Stamp, right? So it gives a lot of Chien Pao a lot of options. And so that's kind of the idea, right? And so that's kind of the main reason why Chien Pao doesn't get a lot of play. And it has nothing to do with Chien Pao being actually just a really, really difficult deck. Chien Pao is just a deck that people just don't put time into learning, basically. They don't test it. They think they can just buy pay to win cards like Arceus V Star and they can just make Chien Pao very powerful and they can just cheat a Chien Pao board and win a cup or something like that. You'll never make it far playing Chien Pao like that. And so that's kind of the reason why Chien Pao is not played that much, right? Um, yeah. So that's kind of just the gist of Chien Pao. Um, I feel like Chien Pao is very strong in this format, so do Sparks, because it has a very good Reggie Drago matchup, right? So Reggie Drago, it's very powerful Pokemon, mainly because it can set up very quickly and do a lot of damage in a lot of different ways. And its main way, however, of doing damage is through it's through copying Dragapult EX's attack. So there's a Drago V Star. It has its attack Apex Dragon. For 2 grass and a fire, choose an attack from a dragon Pokemon in your discard pile and use it as this attack. Right, so it will copy Dragapult EX's attack. So Phantom Dive, energy count doesn't matter because it can just copy its attack. It doesn't matter about the energy. For and it does 200 damage. It says put 6 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon any way you like. Right. So this does 200 damage. Chien Pao has 220 HP. Right. So Regidrago's main strategy is by getting by basically cheating a Dragapult attack in basically on turn 2, right? Whereas Dragapult wouldn't get it as consistently because you have to get to the stage 2, and then you have to set up its fire and psychic, and so instead you just play Regidrago, and you have the V Star, and you have the ability to copy other attacks, right? So since Chien Pao thrives on setting up, you can basically they have to use the other attack that they generally use, which is Giratina V Star's attack, which reads is Lost Impact, 280 damage for grass, psychic, and colors. And it says put 2 energy attached to your Pokemon into the Lost Zone, right? So you would put 2 energy generally attached to the Regidrago into the Lost Zone, and it does 280 damage, right? So this attack can knock out Chien Pao. The issue is you're only taking 2 prizes, right? And you're knocking out a Chien Pao, right? As long as the Bactialibur is still set up, you can still set up a Chien Pao attack, right? And especially with this trainer line, 4 switch, 4 night stretcher, you'll get it back without any issue, right? And an unfair stamp, Pokestop, And so I feel like Chien Pao is very strong in this format just because of that, because it can't just go Phantom Dive, Phantom Dive, Phantom Dive. So Chien Pao is very strong because of that, right? And so it seems that Regidrago is very good in this format and like almost unstoppable, but decks like Chien Pao can stop it very well, right? So that's kind of my sales pitch. If for people who want to pick up Chien Pao, there's been a lot of lists where people play cards like Earthen Vessel and Iron Hands EX, so they can cheat an Iron Hands EX attack in. I feel like that list isn't very strong because that's generally to beat decks like Gardevoir, and you already have Radiant Greninja, so you don't really need um, something like Iron Hands for that. Um, I feel like if you just play a very vanilla Chien Pao, which was the name I gave this Chien Pao list, then you'll have more success with Chien Pao in beating decks like Regidrago, even beating decks like Charizard. And so I feel like just making it very much focused on just getting Chien Pao and back to Oliver set up and being able to cycle Hail Blades is just better than trying to cheat other attackers into play with Max Gallon, right? So yeah, that's generally kind of how I approach Chien Pao in this format. So yeah, I'll just leave it there. I talked a lot this video, um, and so I feel like that's kind of the angle I'm gonna go for. Um, because I feel like this format needs a lot of fleshing out. There's a lot of scrambling to try to find good decks to beat Regidrago, Charizard, Lugia, Dragapult, etc. And so I feel like this format needs a lot of coverage, in-depth coverage, instead of just giving you a deck list so you can just go play on PTCG Live. So I think that's kind of one of the angle I'm going to go for this series of videos for this format, particular for Surgeon Sparks. And so if this went on for long, it's because this format needs a lot of coverage. So yeah, I'm gonna work on my next um deck profile for this format. And this has been the Chien Pao for Brilliant Stars to Surgeon Sparks. And so thank you for listening, and see you in the next video.